The Psijic Order is just drenched in mystery and the unknown. I mean, the game Skyrim sort of gave us just a tiny little bit to quench your thirst, but in reality, I feel like it just made us ask a lot more questions that gave us answers. It showed us this group of individuals with tremendous amounts of power. I mean, the ability to allegedly see the future, maybe know what's about to happen and in what ways you can prevent bad things from happening in the future, but also since we know that the Psijic Order is set up in the Isle of Artanium, which is like all the way into the Summer's Isles, having the ability to sense very powerful magic just anywhere on the world. I mean, even before the character in Skyrim, the Dragonborn, even finds the Eye of Magnus, the Order knows that it is going to happen. They can sense this incredible magical potential, and they go on and they sort of, I guess, conduct this little trial with you. Like, hey, you're going to do this great thing. Let's make sure that you do it right. Isn't that incredible? I mean, there are so many things in that span, in just that tiny little introduction that you are given with the Psijic Order in the Mage Guild questline in Skyrim that is just incredible. They have the ability to sense powerful magic anywhere in the world. They can apparently see the future. They have the ability to stop time, as they sort of stopped time while they were communicating with you. And they can telepathically, I guess, talk to you, which is also sort of a big deal. They also appear to have the ability to just simply teleport. Like, just be in one place and then just appear on another place instantaneously. Now, all of these things is shown to us during this quest line, but that's pretty much it. We're told that it is a great honor to speak to a member of the Psijic Order. We're told that they are this group of incredible spellcasters, just riddled with mystery, and that they are very, very secretive. They don't talk to anyone. Like, these are the things that we do know just from the game Skyrim, but who are they really? And it's interesting because even to the whole concept of the world, like, I feel like they are sort of a big mystery, but there's so much rich story with them, and I wanted to just talk a little bit about them because they are honestly truly fascinating. So first things off, let's just go back to like the beginning of time, like just way before even the Altmer people got to the Somerset Isles. Like, we're talking Altmeris, like even way before then is when we know that these people, they were considered elders. So even before, when there was like this concept of like primeval magical times when the gods walked the earth, these people existed. They were considered to be the elder folk, the people who venerated the old ways of doing things, sort of like the traditionalist between the Altmeri people. When the Altmer moved from Altmeris to the Somerset Isles, it seemed like there was this change in tradition between the elves. This concept that, hey, we used to venerate our ancestors, all of the Edadas, all of these people who we supposedly come from, but now, instead of doing that, we're going to venerate the people who we believe are gods. So they started venerating people like Auriel and people like Trinimac and Ciribane and Finaster, these people who used to be their ancestors but sort of transcended that sort of mortal realm and became gods. Now, the elders, which by then already called themselves the Psijic, already disliked that. They resented that. They thought that it was an insult to their ancestors to stop venerating them for other people who were before ancestors but now became gods. So they essentially did their best to maintain the old ways, to maintain tradition, and that's the beginning of the Psijic Order as we know it. This group of very old, very wise sort of sages who got together and said, hey, we need to preserve all of this knowledge, all of this ancient sort of magics, so that as time progresses, we don't lose it. And that's sort of like the beginning of things, and that's why they're so secretive. They essentially went into their own little island and made it their fortress. You see, Artanium, which is where they are, is this sort of a magical wonderland where, and there's this one instance, I don't remember the name of the book, but there's this one book of this writer in the lore of the Elder Scrolls, this guy who was allowed entrance into Artanium so that he could, I guess, catalog everything and write about the island, and he was allowed access. He said that parts of the island phase in and out of reality, seemingly at will by the Psijic people. Like, they have the ability to say, all right, well, this part of the island will just vanish, then we're gonna make this other part of the island appear, and they have sort of this incredible power of just controlling nature or reality at will, which is, I mean, honestly incredible. We also have records of the entire island simply disappearing from existence, only to reappear 500 years later, without sort of any explanation as to where they were or what happened. These people just seem to have this incredible ability. Now, as far as the magics that these guys possess, they seem to venerate this one specific style of magic, which is what they say is, I guess, the old ways of doing magic, which is what they call they have the ability to control nature at, what's the right way they use it? I think they have a name. Let me see if I can look it up real quick. They say it is, they can bind the forces of nature to their will, to an individual's will. It's literally what they call it, which is interesting because we know that the Psijic Order developed what we know as mysticism. Now, mysticism is not in Skyrim. It's a school of magic that was removed from Oblivion, but if you go back to Oblivion, you'll notice that in mysticism, there's a couple of interesting spells that are just sort of on that particular school of magic. We're talking detect magic, we're talking the ability to sense life, so like life sense, we're talking soul trap, we're talking reflect, so it's a couple of really interesting things here and there, and telekinesis. Now, why is that interesting? It's interesting because look at what they sort of claim to have the power of. They claim to have the power of nature. They can manipulate nature to their will. And then you see things like telekinesis, right? You have the ability to grab matter and, I guess, make it float, make it move, make it jump, make it do whatever. You have the ability to manipulate things, which is interesting. Dispel magic. I mean, what is that? You can say, you have no magic. I'm gonna remove magic from you. That thing that you're casting, I'm gonna sever that from you. That's interesting. You have the ability to sense magic all around the world. You have the ability to detect magic all around the world. But most importantly, and this is the part that blows my mind, they were the ones that invented the ability to soul trap. Because we know for a fact that the Psijic Order essentially invented mysticism when people didn't even know what mysticism was. Like, they essentially, the nature of all of these type of spells, like, they were the ones that sort of founded them in the first place. Now, we know that Manimarco, the King of Worms, the very famous necromancer, used to be a student of the Psijic Order. It's interesting because I imagine this world where Manimarco, you know, he wants to control people. He wants to make armies of people. He wants to maybe own the world or do just evil shit, right? He wants to police the Daedrus and make them fight for him. But he doesn't really have a way to do that. And then he becomes a student of the Psijic Order and he realizes, hey, I can soul trap people. I can make them do whatever I want with this power. I can maybe soul trap their souls and then offer those souls to Daedrus for them to do whatever I want them to do in exchange. I mean, imagine his face when he enters this like library of spells that at this point in the world, like, nobody knows, right? That is cool as hell. Now, let's talk about a couple of the students now that we're sort of in that topic. So who has actually been part of the Psijic Order that is famous? Now, we have a few people in here. We know that the Psijic Order has had dealings with everywhere on the world. We know that they have had a lot of dealings, obviously, with the nobility in the Somerset Isles that, you know, the kings and queens of the Elmerian Dominion, they definitely sort of listen to the Psijic Order and whatever they have to say. We know that Talos did so as well. We know that a lot of different kings and queens sort of have had dealings with the Psijic Order, and whenever they whenever they get into like the whole political dealings, like they do it right. We have records of them completely destroying armies at will whenever they want to. It's kind of incredible. But students, there's this very famous student that I want to talk about because it's important to the world, to the lore of the Elder Scrolls. His name is Vanus Galerian. Now, Vanus used to be this little kid, this servant to nobility, and to just a noble of no importance in the Elmeri sort of cities of Somerset Isles. He used to be just a kid. His whole family was servants of this noble. So he used to clean, you know, floors, I would imagine, maybe even cook food, clean dishes, that sort of thing. You see, back in the old days of the Somerset Isles, magic used to be illegal for anyone who wasn't a noble or a rich person. You essentially had to be privileged to be able to cast or even be taught magic. So it was illegal for a servant to know magic. However, his father, the father of Vanus, was a very, I guess, knowledgeable person. He wanted to learn more about magic. He wanted his son to learn about magic. So he sort of hired this black market of magical books that was sort of going on at the time. However, the wife of this guy betrayed him and he was executed. His son, having learned a little bit of magic, was in danger of being executed as well, so he ran away. He was later found by this very important person in the Psijic Order who was, I believe he was like the leader at the time, the chief guy. He found this little kid sort of just dying, you know, of starvation and of the weather, just sort of on the side of the road in this ditch. So he you know, helped him out, helped him, fed him. But he realized that this kid had a lot of potential. There was something of a savant in terms of magic. He knew a lot of magic and how to cast spells, even, you know, despite his condition of being a servant, and that he, you know, only had really so much time to train magic, yet he was really good at it. So he decided to take him into the Psijic Order and train him. Now, this is where the whole story between, like, sort of Manimarco and Vanus starts, as they were both sort of students at the same time. It created this massive, like, sort of rivalry. But Vanus was actually the guy who invented the Mages Guild in the first place. Before, again, magic was very, very rare. This was not a thing that existed back then. So he, you know, sort of growing up with this sort of concept of, hey, no one knows magic. Magic is sort of illegal in most places. There's really no books that teaches it. Like, I need to change that. I want to change that. In honor of my father who sacrificed his life to teach others of magic, I'm gonna teach the world magic. So he founded the Mages Guild, which I guess is kind of a big deal in terms of the lore, and he has a lot to do with the Psijic Order, so I wanted to talk about him. But eventually, you know, he confronts Manimarco, and Manimarco ends up, you know, killing him, and that's this whole spiel about, you know, that sort of specific war. But, yeah, outside of that, as far as like story and lore that is being given to us about the Psijic Order, we're pretty much as close to dawn, and that's why the Psijic Order is so interesting, is because they are so special, they are so powerful. I mean, just the amount of magic, and I'm gonna get into like the pinnacle of their magic in just a second, but just to finish that point, like, they're so interesting because we don't know that much else about them. I mean, they have essentially just been disappearing and reappearing again. We know that 100 years before the game of Skyrim, they disappeared again, and we don't know where they are, right? And we don't know why they disappeared in the first place, you know, like thousands of years ago. So it's like they're sort of clouded in mystery, right? We know that between 1,000 years, like in this span of 1,000 years, they only contacted like 17 people. You know, so that they could join their ranks. Like, they are that secretive and that sort of, I guess, in their own way, so to speak. So that's what makes them so interesting. But I want to talk about Kim. Now, Kim, spelled C-H-I-M. There's something that has been brought up in a couple of videos. You guys sort of wanted me to talk about it, and I feel like this is probably the right time to do so. since it'll sort of, I guess, give you guys this impression of the Psijic Order and how much power they really possess, which I think is very important. So what is Kim? Kim is essentially the ability to, for a mortal, is the ability to say fuck you to the rules of the gods, and I guess become invincible, become immortal. It's essentially the ability for a person, for an individual, either where that is a god or a mortal, just anyone, for them to reach like ultimate power. That's what Kim essentially is. And there's a lot of different explanations, but just to keep it simple, that's sort of what it is. Now, Kim has only really truly been accomplished, as far as we know, as far as like we have confirmation of, two different people. One is Talos. We know that he sort of became one with the universe, and he had the ability to change reality at will. We know that that's how he, you see, Cyrodiil used to be all jungle, but he claimed that people hated jungles, so he became one with the universe, and he erased all the jungles of Cyrodiil, just so that he could show all the love he had for his people. So we know that he did it because it's in a couple of books, at least. You know, we don't know if he really truly did it, but that's just as far as like the game wants to tell us that he did. So yeah, we'll just accept it. The other one was Vivek. We know Vivek to be obviously one of the members of the Tribunal of Morrowind, one of the entities that absorbed power from the heart of Lorkhan and became demigods. We know that he achieved Kim, and in fact he talked a lot about Kim in a lot of different books. He talks about what Kim is and how to reach it, how to do it. There's a couple of really interesting theories about Vivek, because he claims that, you know, I've talked about Lorkhan a lot. I've talked about what humans believe of Lorkhan, what elves believe of Lorkhan. We know that Lorkhan, you know, to some people he was good. You know, he gave life to those who didn't have it. We know that the elves believe that he essentially screwed up all of the divinities, you know, make them mortal. Like Auriel used to be a god, now he was like this guy walking on the earth, you know, he wasn't a god anymore. And a lot of elves believe that he sort of stole their divinity from them and made them mortals, which obviously they sort of resent that from him. Vivek, however, had a different opinion. He claimed that Lorkhan actually did this for everybody, because even gods are trapped in this sort of prison, created by Padome and Anu. You see, when Anu and Padome sort of fought, or you know, they did their dance, they created this sort of universe, this world that had rules, and people, even gods that were sort of created, were bound to these rules. And he Lorkhan figured out a way to, I guess, break the rules created by Anu and Padome. But to do that, it was very difficult, because you had to essentially figure out... how do I explain this? So he figured out that the universe, our biz, was kind of like a tube. It had a beginning, it had an end, and then everything in between was existence. He figured out that even reality itself had a beginning and an end, which was already a big deal at the time. But he figured out that he could, I guess, meditate so hardcore that he could sort of leave reality. He could push himself out of existence and see himself in this third person in the Orbis. And what he realized was that if you sort of tilt your head, a tube of existence almost looks like a tower. You know, just imagine a cylindrical figure coming from the ground up. It has a beginning, it has an end, and then everything inside of the tower is existence. He realized that, oh wow, yeah, I guess existence is kind of a tower. I can see where it starts, I can see where it ends, I can see where it begins, and I can see myself inside of it. Now that I can see myself inside of it, I understand existence so well that I can manipulate it. I can become anything that I ever wanted to. However, as a god, as an Ada, as an Aedra, as a Daedra, it's very difficult. Imagine yourself, it's very difficult to see how you can start and how you can end, since you are immeasurable. You're a god. You don't have a start, you don't have an end. You cannot see your limitations, and that was a problem. He figured out that he couldn't reach perfection without being able to see his flaws. So what he did was he created the world of Nirn, the planet where the Elder Scrolls series is from. He created the planet so that everyone could become mortal, so that then they could see their imperfections, so that then they could transcend immortality and become someone like Anu and Padme, transcend Adras, become something better than that. And that's what Vivek said. Vivek said, hey, this is what he did. He's a really good guy. Don't believe in the lies that, Trinimac used to spit. Because Trinimac and a lot of the old school, like Auriel, they used to say, like, oh my god, Lorcan screwed us, like, we used to be gods and now we're this, oh my god, yada, yada, yada. Vivek said, hey, no, actually what he did was really good. Because this can help us. And that's what Vivek did. Vivek managed to sort of transcend existence, and then he disappeared. We don't know where he is, right? He believes that first of all, he believes that the Heart of Lorcan has a lot to do with it, and as far as like allowing him to reach Kim. But he also believes that that's what happened to the Dwemer, that the Dwemer reached Kim and essentially just disappeared. Like they essentially became more than just gods and then just left existence. Which might be what happened to Vivek, because we don't know where he is, right? As far as I understand it. But why am I talking about Kim? I'm talking about Kim because it is told to us that the Psijic Order actually has a way of reaching Kim, but it's interesting. It's interesting because there are apparently two ways of reaching Kim. The old way and the new way. We know that the Psijic Order knows how to do it the old way, but not necessarily the new way. Now, that's all we know. There's really no information about this. We don't know what the different ways are, whether what Vivek just said is necessarily like the old or the new way. We don't know. We just know that they know. At least that they have this information, which is interesting to me, right? Because you have these people who have the ability to see into the future. They have the ability to communicate through telepathy. They have the ability to teleport anywhere into the world, wherever they want to. They have the ability to sense magic anywhere in the world, right? They have the ability to leave and come back at will, which is something that we know that the Dwemer did. They disappeared. We know that Vivek has the ability to do that because he disappeared, right? So maybe they have the ability to do Kim. Maybe all of them know Kim. I find that very interesting. I mean, it shows just how much power these people might possess. We know that Sota Seal, which is also one of the tribunal members of the Morrowind sort of court, who became a demigod, was also a teacher in the Psijic Order, although we don't know if he ever achieved Kim, so that's sort of like a thing. But yeah, I don't know what else to talk about this, guys, but it's sort of interesting to me, right? Just the amount of power this guy's possess. They definitely have like a different sort of, I don't know, variety of powers which no one else in the world possesses. Like if you were to become a mage in Skyrim, like there's only so much of this that you can actually do, right? You cannot really talk telepathically with other people, right? Like it's not something that I believe like a mage would be able to do normally. Well, you guys can prove me wrong. Is there an instance where a normal mage can do that in any of the games? I would like to know, just out of curiosity. We also know that the Psijic Order has a way of manipulating magic that is not magicka, which is very interesting to me as well. Which could be sort of like the old way versus the new way, right? The new way of doing magic is magicka, whereas the old way is maybe something different. And we know that they have access to that, which is it's so cool. These guys are so cool. There's just so much information and we just don't know anything. But anyways, that's all I wanted to talk about today. I hope you guys enjoyed my rambling video of craziness. And yeah, you guys wanted me to talk about Kim, so I talked about Kim. There you go. I hope that my explanation was sufficient, even though it's such a sort of a crazy philosophical, like psychedelic like idea of the world, like looking at the world through like a tower, like within the beginning, and I don't know, it's weird. Anyways, see you all next time. Bye bye, folks.